Welcome to the Dwarven Forge Build of the Month for May of 2021, and this is Red Rot Ruin. This build is made with 5 sets and 1 pack of terrain trays, and as the name implies, it's heavily focused on ruins. This whole thing is available as a bundle on our web store with a bonus gift card, but only for the month of May. So, the story is, 4 children have ventured into Bleakmire Swamp, but only one has returned. The poor young survivor is riddled with terrible red boils. The local healer says it's a horrible case of red rot, the worst she's ever seen. The only cure is the scarlet swamp bloom. It's a flower that grows about knee-high with 5 red petals on it. Deep, deep, deep in the swamp, far deeper than any sane person would go. So what do? They call upon the adventurers. Please, will you venture into the swamp, find our 3 missing children, and find the cure for this young lad. He's racked with fever dreams. He's muttering about hearing the ants, and we are many. It's nonsense. They think he's gonna die at any moment. Please, go into the swamp and be heroes. So let's see what happens as the adventurers go into the swamp and find Red Rot Ruin. Before we start, I just want to show, there's a few pieces we didn't use. We've got 3 spike traps. As cool as they are, they didn't make it in. We have this rock pillar. I took the door out of the door frame. We'll see that later. And then there's these 3 guys, which will show up in the adventure, so they don't really count. So the adventurers will venture into Bleakmire Swamp. It is dark, and it is wet, and it is oppressive. Out of the mist, it'll part, and they'll see some ruins ahead. Poof. All right, so our adventurers, let's say they're going to enter from over here. This whole build is just a big sandbox, right? It's a wide open space. They can kind of wander around, go wherever they find interesting, and sort of do as they want. They have free reign to go wherever they want. I'm sort of assuming the outside of the build will be just thick, dense swamp vegetation is kind of impassable. So we'll constrain it to here, but within these bounds, they can sort of do whatever they want. And super important thing to note is this, down here, this terrain here, this is all swamp water, right? It's like knee-high or maybe waist-high swamp water. So it's difficult terrain, slow to go through, and worst of all, leeches. Lots of leeches. Right? So as your players are like slowly making their way through, maybe the leeches don't do anything until they take damage. As soon as you're getting hit with damage, then the leeches will like swarm, and maybe it takes some damage over time. The longer they're in the water taking damage, the leeches just latch on. Plus, you can have the unsettling thing of the stuff is like brushing up against their leg, and there's like dark, slimy bits under there. You don't know what it is, but yeah. The whole purpose is to kind of make this feel just creepy and wet and scary and gloomy and put them on edge. So let's assume that they're going to pop up to the first piece of dry land and be really happy to not be wandering around in the muck. Oh, Gary, we've made it. We're out of the muck. Now let's find those plants and save these kids. And luckily for our adventurers, right ahead, there, waiting in the darkness, are 2 bright red plants. These must be the scarlet swamp blooms that they're looking for. However, they were told they were like knee-high plants. These things are like, what are these, like 15 feet tall. Something is definitely amiss. But it seems like it just could be easy enough, right? They just have to find the little pods, dig them out, and find the kids, and they get out of here. So, of course, it's never going to be that easy, right? So let's say they come wandering over here. Perhaps a little perception check or investigation, or maybe you just want to give it to them. There's something, there's like something moving with these rocks, right? Something is amiss, something is awry, something is slimy and creepy and offsetting. So of course, that's the cue for adventurers to start like poking around, right? Because it's like clearly there's something terrible afoot. Let's poke it with a stick. And as soon as they sort of disturb these rocks or whatever, suddenly poof, they sort of burst aside and revealing this thing. So it's supposed to be like a jump scare, right? Just bursting out of there. They're not expecting there to be a pit. It's kind of a fun gag on the table. People don't realize this thing moves. You pop it out, and suddenly there's a thing bursts out. And this is this weird, unsettling. It's a weird mass of vines and plant vegetation, but it's all infested with ants, right? It's this massive colony of ants that's somehow like moving this thing, like this whole swarm is animating this lump of vegetation, which is just pretty hideous, right? Because then it's just kind of like you just slurp after you. And the best part is, if it gets you with these tendrils, it's gonna like just pull you in. Who's it gonna get? I think it's gonna get. It's gotta get rabbit, right? So, it pulls them in, and it pulls in, and there's just leeches, right? There's this bowl in the middle that's just full of like hundreds of leeches, which just want to like latch onto your face and start like draining the blood out of your face. Just horrific stuff. But as long as you got Gary Gygax around, whoever, a few throat chops, and you can probably get out of there. So you can have a fun fight with this thing. Hopefully it's a constrained, tough area. Like ideally the players probably don't want to fall back off into the leech-filled water. So it becomes this really kind of tight battle where they can't really get away, especially if they got casters or something squishy and it's going after them. So it should be a fun, tight little dynamic, close quarters battle. And let's say they defeat this slimy horror. Ugh. Hopefully that's the worst of things we have yet to face. But it's not. So they'll probably, they want to get to these red plants, the scarlet swamp blooms, but they're probably, how are they going to miss this this strange sort of collection of weird, slimy, gelatinous, like egg sac looking things? So we got to check that out. Maybe we won't poke this one with a stick, but we got to check that out. So if entering closer, get a little, you don't even need to check, right? As soon as you get in there close enough, you can see something is terribly unsettling. This is like an old mound of decaying flesh. There's probably just a disturbing amount of recognizable child-sized hand, and like this is the remains of one of the children they're looking for, and it's now host to hundreds of these like egg sacs are growing out of the flesh, and who knows what's going to hatch out of there, but I'll tell you what, it is not good. So maybe they'll be, maybe they'll just leave it alone. Maybe they'll burn it up with fire. I don't know what's going to happen there, but that's a fun one. You could play with what happens depending on what the players do with that hideous discovery. But it should also be a little disheartening that they've found 1 out of the 3 missing children, and they're so far beyond dead. They're now a host to 100 gelatinous egg sacs. Ugh. So, with heavy hearts, let's say they go over here, because there's a bunch of different ways you can jump off this thing. They could go this way. They could thread the needle and go through on this way. They could wander over here and hop and try and make the long jump over here. Maybe they work their way all the way over here and go in this log. But for the sake of, let's say they come on over here, beckoning this red flower. This is it. This is what we need. So if they can do some nice, simple jumping, platforming, lots of fun adventures, lots of fun opportunities for players to fall in the water, get more leeches on them. But at this point, it's not the worst thing in the world, right? Just a few leeches, just some mud in the boots. So players can make it across over here, and they get close to this scarlet swamp bloom, and just like everything so far, something is amiss. So this thing has grown to incredible proportions, but they can see that it's wrapped by clinging vines that seem to be drawing out its essence and sort of parasitically living off it. They're enlarging it. It's engorging on things around it, but clearly it's going to die and maybe burst. And sure enough, as soon as the players get close, it's probably going to send out a burst of terrible choking spores, which could have some wonderful debilitating effect. What would be why don't you tell us in the comments, what's a fun debilitating effect if you get blasted with a bunch of spores from this thing? So after they've dealt with the spores, sure enough, these little pods, they have not yet sprouted, so their essence is still, it's not poisonous yet, so the players can harvest it. It's great use of a nature check, or use your herbalism kit or an alchemy kit. Let them use those checks in a fun way. They can harvest this stuff, and if they bring it back to the village, use it to concoct an antidote. Check. You quest, hey, let's just go home, right? Well, they didn't find the other 2 kids, but so maybe at that point they hear a voice in their heads. There's something in there. It's a whispering. It's like 1,000 little voices. So, if some strange telepathic voices aren't quite enough to entice them, perhaps the players will see there's another weird lump of egg sacs here, a cluster over here. So let's say that entices them over, and they'll kind of wander over yonder and discover it is yet another terribly decomposing corpse of one of the other children. And this one may be slightly more recognizable, so they definitely can tell without a question this is a dead child with just hundreds of weird, gooey egg sacs just bored into its back, drawing sustenance out of its decomposing flesh. Just a terrible, terrible way to go. So hopefully they'll give him last rites. And sorry, kid, shouldn't have gone in the swamp, I guess. But when they get over here, they're a little too close to this innocent pile of dirt, which of course is not an innocent pile of dirt. It is another jump scare. The top of the dirt pops open and out bursts. Ants. Oh, they're just ants. They're just ants, Gary, right? Or they're just plain old ants. It can't be that bad, right? I don't think so, Rabbit. And of course, Gary's right. They're not just ants. These are terrible blood ants. Right? They have gorged on the blood of other living things. And it's to the point where it's just dripping out. It's pouring out their eyes. It's coming out of the cracks in their chitinous armor. Their whole body is reddish and just sort of dripping. They're leaving weird footprints of blood behind them. Their eyes are like strange and dead and have like a weird bloody glow, if that's even possible. And these are the things that have been telepathically talking to them, and they once again, they're assaulting them mentally with the sounds. Yes, join, submit to the swarm, feed us, we are many. And a combat will ensue. And of course, we're on the edge of the water here, so chances are maybe somebody's going to end up in the water, and if they do, and they take some damage, the leeches will swarm them, so leeches are coming from the sides. There's water, it's difficult terrain. And of course, these blood ants are also can spray them with caustic blood. It burns them like acid. We've written up some stats for you, which you can download on a link in the description, so you too can torment your players with gross blood ants and all these other fun bits. So hopefully a lively combat will ensue where we have difficult terrain and water and jumpy bits. But hopefully your players will... You get him in there, Gary. All right, I think we got him. I'm ready to get out of this swamp. This place is terrible. Oof. However, after slowing the blood ants, can't help notice, but over here, what's that? There's a gleam in the darkness ahead. There's something. What do they spot? Can only be one thing: treasure. So of course they can't turn back now. There's something waiting for them. There's gold in the distance. So let's say they navigate over more difficult terrain. There's areas they could jump over. They could cross over the log if they want. Oh, it's a. Can I do this? Ah! So you can travel over this log, or they can leap, however they want to get over here. And over here, they will of course find their way blocked by some weird webbing. And on closer inspection, this isn't like spider webbing. This is, strangely enough, it's a bunch of the natural swamp vines which have been overtaken by some sort of strange parasitic fungus, which has grown over the vines and has expanded greatly. And so this whole thing is this weird, like, fungus webs, which perhaps your players will be like, I don't even know. But then, of course, they see the treasure. But let's just say, for the sake of covering the whole build, that they want to take a detour over here for now and check out that last egg sac. So you can wander on over here. Once again, because it's a sandbox, there's a bunch of different ways to crisscross over to the different islands. And they also, if they want to, they can just sort of, they can wade through some waist-deep water, just deal with the leeches. So over here, once again, another of these overgrown scarlet swamp blooms, which can release some toxic spores. Maybe they can discharge it from a distance. Hey, I'll shoot you with my arrow, Gary. Watch this. And then they can work their way around. And over here, sure enough, this is the last body of the last child, which is also now host to the myriad lumps of gelatinous egg sac grossness. And we still don't even know what's even going to come out of those. That's like a whole nother... Bleh. Anyway, nothing good. It's just feeding off the rotting flesh of children. Oof. So at this point, they're like, well, I guess we have to go get the treasure, right? There's nowhere else to explore. So pop our way back around, boom, 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 and face the webs. So there's a couple of things we could do at this point. One, you could just try and climb over the wall, and maybe they come in contact with the web and something happens in the way down. They could get crazy, and they could sort of wade through the water and come around to the backside. Or, like probably any classic good adventure, they could maybe try and blast it with fire, try and burn off webs, like usually works with most webs. But of course, this fungus actually feeds on fire. It's like a brown mold variety, and it feeds on fire, and it actually just grows, and maybe it lashes out. So if they hit it with fire, they get like a whole face full of gross, slimy fungus web. Not so pleasant. Of course, they could cut through it too. So let's say maybe Gary does one of his patented chops, and chops through, and they can go on in to find the treasure and maybe something else. Let's see what awaits them in the final room here. So our adventurers will enter into this chamber and immediately help themselves to the gold, the treasure. It's clearly been in the swamp for a very long time. There's like just corrosion and crust of slime all over everything. But it is gold and platinum, and there's some jewels and the like. And then they kind of can look around the chamber and realize that this looks like it was once a temple, sort of the inner sanctum of a temple. This whole place was some sort of temple complex, long forgotten to a god whose name has been erased from the walls. The sort of the holy symbols on the walls have been, they've just sort of been rubbed off and corroded and covered with fungus and the like. So they may never know who this god once was. But where the altar once was, something strange draws their eye. There is a mound of dirt, a circular mound of dirt, and it looks like hundreds of mandibles or little legs have patted it together with like insect secretions, right? So it's been made. There's this weird circular mound of dirt that has been made by a swarm of insects. And around the top, there's small circles inscribed, 8 small circles in a circle surrounding the top. And inside, there's sort of the dried remnants of blood, like this was an altar filled with blood. And in the center of that, there's an amulet, glowing with power, pulsing with magic, something so powerful that no adventurer can resist. Why, Gary, I think I would just look delightful wearing a new pendant, don't you think? I don't know, Rabbit. It looks dangerous. Oh, no, I'll just go over and touch it. We shouldn't leave it here in the swamp, right? So, as soon as they touch the pendant, maybe even they put it on if they're really feeling brash and bold, a strange light begins to glow in the altar. A blood-red light illuminates everything, and they hear a voice in their head.
Your gods tell you are noble and strong, but you are not. You are insignificant, a singular ant. However, in a swarm, even the mosquito is mighty. And in a legion, they can train even the mightiest beast. We are that legion. Our swarm is gathering, and we are many, for we are Entrogus.
Oh, I say, that was rather unsettling, wasn't it, Gary? Rabbit, I think we shouldn't tell anybody about this, and let's just get out of this swamp. Oh, right, but I am taking this amulet, right? It's magic. Yeah, let's go. So, with that, your adventurers can leave with a strange, dark omens, dark tidings. The name Entrogus will haunt their dreams. But after that, they can journey back through the swamp, back to the village. They can bring the sprouts from the small bulbs of the scarlet swamp bloom back and brew the antidote and at least save the one child and tell the distraught villagers that their other 3 children have perished, but they gave them last rites, so their memory will live on. But what also may live on
is Entrogus.
And that was Red Rot Ruin, a dismal romp through the slimy bog, which I hope didn't bug your players to the point of ruin. This whole thing is available as a bundle on our web store with a bonus gift card, but only for the month of May. We also have build guides available as a download on our website, and this month we have 5e stats available also as a free download. All of those links are in the description below. If you like this and want to help us build the next one, be sure to tune in to our Building of the Build of the Month on Twitch, where we take your ideas and suggestions and incorporate them into our final build. This month, we have a big thanks to Meta Elite, who did the voice
Of Entrogus.
And be sure to like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss out on this or any of our other quality content from us here at Dwarven Forge. We hope this inspires you, and now it's back to the swans. We are many.